Hello.
We're here at 6 o'clock. Welcome to our second live web streaming interview. We look forward to getting your questions. We're here tonight with Seth Jaret, and by the way, thanks so much for making time.
My pleasure.
To come in tonight.
My pleasure.
Seth's a pretty busy guy. He's a literary manager, a producer, and the CEO of Content Engine, a company that is on the cutting edge of creating new content for the new media world. Just to give a little bit of context to who Seth is, his clients have written movies like Legally Blonde, 10 Things I Hate About You, House Bunny, currently Hell on Wheels, which is on AMC.
Not writing, but directed the pilot and executive produced the first season, did the first 4 of 10, and last season as well. It's now coming back for a third season. So writers, directors, authors, other movies like Rounders and
right,
Whip It.
The Shields, Yes, I New York.
She's the Man.
Cold Case, on and on. It's a pretty extensive list, and you're a pretty busy guy. So once again, thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I guess we're gonna just follow the same structure that we did for our previous interview, which was with Carrie Audino,
casting director.
Yeah. And basically, we want to get a better idea of who you are. As a person, where you're from? Yeah, New York, right?
From New York, yeah.
Yeah. And did you study in New York, or?
Yeah,
how did you come? How did you come to the world of entertainment? How did you come to California? Lifelong dream, or did you stumble into it pursuing something else? Sort of give us an idea for how you got to be here.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Westchester, in Scarsdale, New York. Always loved movies, spent a lot of time going to movies with my family or on my own with my brother, and never really considered it a career. Had actually planned to go to Wall Street or to be an entrepreneur, investment banker, or something of that ilk. And I'd seen a movie, The Player. Robert Altman's The Player.
Great film.
Fantastic movie. And what it did was it introduced the industry, the entertainment industry, and its all of the ins and outs. And it showcased it as, this is the people behind the scenes. This is what film executives do. Gave you a flavor for what producers do. And it was another movie that just inspired me. So I was inspired by movies to begin with, and then specifically this movie. But I had pursued a number of things. I studied entrepreneurship at Cornell and business management. I also studied playwriting and acting, and produced a short film and some commercials there, and did film production. So I had a pretty eclectic education, but essentially I did my junior year overseas in Holland, and just had felt if there was an epicenter I was meant to be part of, I'd move further from it. Mm-hmm. And so I came back my senior year, got a subscription to Variety Weekly, started to build a database of people who are making things happen in Hollywood, and starting to network.
Well, that's interesting. Okay, so you started. What sort of criteria goes into building a database of people that are getting things done in?
Well,
Hollywood?
It was really just tracking the people who were, everyone might know, the big names like David Geffen or Steven Spielberg or Katzenberg or Eisner, but the people who are doing the day-to-day transactional stuff, the agents who are selling material and projects that are getting set up, and just learning the vernacular of Hollywood. And Variety has a very specific vernacular, and certainly did at the time. When an executive ankles a company, what does that mean? When something goes into turnaround, what does that mean? So learning this Hollywood nomenclature, I mean, that was part of the allure too. You know, I was always enamored of different industries because they all had their own, you know, contextual vernacular. So it's, you know, you're becoming you're just learning the ropes by learning how people speak to each other and learning the terms of art.
Sure. Learning the language of that particular industry.
The lingo.
The jargon.
So yeah, I didn't have any relationships in Hollywood, but just networked and, like I said, kind of built a network. Anybody that my father might know, he was a doctor, and so any of the patients that were connected to entertainment, sure, even the most kind of tertiary ways, and I'd contact them. And
now, was your focus always screenwriting or writing or direct? What was the focus, or did the focus develop over the course of your experiences?
Well, I graduated on a Sunday. I started an internship working for a producer the following Monday, and
here or in Philly?
No, not in New York.
Sorry,
no, that's all right. In Los Angeles, and yeah, I drove out to Burbank. He had an office on the Disney lot, and he was about to make Beautiful Girls, or actually Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, and
it's another great movie.
Yeah, so I was there at an interesting time, and you know, just really cutting your teeth. It's like, get your foot in the door, even if it means working for free. I've, you know, mentored a number of interns, dozens in fact. I've hired a number of interns. So coming out, working for free, seeing what the environment's like, getting your foot in the door, that's really the first step. So I had done that for a summer. I worked for a director for a few months. Then I became an executive at a production company at Paramount, and really still was striving to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to have my own business, wanted to be able to pursue my own passions and muse, and management wasn't really something that existed. Losing my headphones. Management wasn't something that was really as pervasive as it is now. There was one manager named Warren Zide who was very active at the time, and he was selling scripts with a then agent at ICM, Jeff Robinoff, who's now chairman of the motion picture group at Warner Brothers. But he and Warren would sell specs together, and so I was contemplating my next move and wanted to be able to break talent, and had been reading lots of scripts and developing my network of relationships, and decided to leave that job to become a manager and start to work out of my apartment in Hollywood, and really just pounded the pavement, started to build a writer list and read lots of writers, and very quickly I sold something as a TV movie that was kind of a repurposed feature script. So within a month I'd done that, and I thought, okay, so
could you just back up? We have our membership as at different
Sure.
levels of let's just call it engagement with the entertainment industry.
Mm-hmm.
There's some people that are just getting started, other people that have been around for a little while. So when you say a script that was re-engaged, what do you mean by that?
Repurposed. Well, what I mean is that it was a feature script that didn't sell at the time, and so I took it to a TV movie producer, and they bought it. So it was kind of what they call busted spec. It's like if you've taken a feature script out and it hasn't sold as a feature, you can repurpose it potentially as a TV project. Now, MOWs, Movies of the Week, aren't really made anymore, so that's not really something that happens where you have a...
Hold on right there.
Yeah.
I have to interject something. So Seth's a really interesting guest because he has... as we've heard, a long and varied successful past in what's called now traditional media. But he's also somebody that is already engaged with the future, new media. And he has Content Engine, which is a company that focuses on new media and engaging through new media. So a lot of my thinking in asking questions and engaging you is sort of, it's in my mind that you're very aware of where that paradigm shift is.
Mm-hmm.
So as we talk about
Sure.
traditional media, I'm also going to start interjecting questions about sort of, okay, so there's no more movies of the week. What happened to them, and where are we going with that?
Right.
So in this case, there's no more movies of the week. What happened to the movie of the week, and what's in its place?
Well, movies of the week, and I was never that was never a big portion of my business, but movies of the week were predicated upon producers making them for $2 or $3 million, and there was a big aftermarket in home video, and they could sell them internationally. So they could keep the budgets low. They would get network airings, and they could sell them foreign and home video, and that market has dissipated significantly. And I think, home video overall has, even for studio features, so of a higher caliber with marquee stars, it isn't what it was. And foreign, I think it's just a much more difficult marketplace, and it's just not really a format that the networks embrace anymore. So things have really transitioned away from that. Where I think there's opportunity is in miniseries. Actually, they used to do a lot of event kind of miniseries, and I think miniseries are actually a fairly potentially robust format, just because not everything is just a movie, 2-hour length. Not everything is a TV show that can go on for 100 episodes and multiple seasons. So some stories just might be 8 hours or 10 hours or what have you. So I think, and with the way people are consuming home video or streaming or VOD content now, watching things in kind of a binge, chapterized
that's the way I do
it. Exactly. Most people do. So I think the potential of doing, event miniseries is actually something that could be a new trend. And I think those things could also sell well overseas. But so we'll see if that as a format starts to emerge. So going back to working out of the apartment in Hollywood, I sold this script as a TV movie. Then I spent about a year trying to develop different writers and scout for new talent. And
how does one go about doing that? Well, let's break it apart. And, we can just touch on this briefly. We don't have to get into the minutiae of spotting new talent and developing, because I know that is a subject all onto itself. But yeah, how do you spot new talent? And then once you do, how do you develop that talent?
Well, I think it's mostly instinctive.
And if I might, what would be the difference between the way that you would develop that talent as opposed to somebody else? Meaning, how much does the personal taste of the person shepherding the project influence the outcome? Does that make sense, what I'm asking?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, you look pretty much everywhere if you're building a list from scratch. So anywhere and anyhow, you can meet up-and-coming writers. Any referrals? Anyone who's read anything that they liked, and you beat the bushes. So you're reading a ton. You're looking for anybody who has, or at least I was, any amount of talent, and then really develop a story or develop their story so it's as good as it can be, or develop a story so it's as good as can be. My personal approach is identifying voice, someone who has something unique to say in the way that they write and express themselves, and then it's a criteria that it's really a totality of talent, which is to say it's the voice on the page, it's how they conceive of story, it's their other ideas, it's how well they can express those ideas. Are they good in a room? Do they have confidence? There's really a plethora of different skills that they need to exemplify. And you can enhance certain aspects, and typically my approach, I mean, it's great if you can find a script to read that's ready to go out to the marketplace, but typically that would be a good sample, and then I develop something from scratch with that writer, or the script needs a lot of work, but it may be a great idea. So in terms of my own personal taste, I tend to have a lot of influence on the projects that I'm involved in, and the projects that I develop and the talent that I break. So, it's about identifying that talent, enhancing it, steering it, and then shepherding those individual projects. So someone had, the question that often gets asked is, what's the difference between a manager and a producer? And in my outlook, there's nothing. There's no distinction between what I do as a manager and what I do as a producer. It's really just a question of whether you get credit for it or not.
That's good. I'm going to take that and break it down into two separate camps. Okay, one is on the project side, right? What makes a project viable? What about a project gives it that consideration that it's a viable project, that yes, we can do this. This is something we can work with, or this is something that can be bought, or I'll let you talk to me about that. And then the other aspect of it is on the production side, on the distinction that you just made. Once you identify a project as viable, then where does your producer hat, if there's a distinction between producer and manager, where does the producer hat come in?
What was the first part of the question?
What makes
a project viable? Yeah. So really, it's instinctive. The way I approach it, it's really, do you get the chill test, or short of chills? I mean, is it just something that in your gut you feel is commercial and has a hook? Because right now the marketplace is such that people are really looking for very, very commercial projects. They have to be distinctive. They have to be great ideas.
I'm going to get into what's behind that smile in a second.
Well, it's really, look at the movies that the studios are making. I mean, they're big budget, generally either repurposed IP or remakes or superhero stories or sequels or what have you. So they want a pre-awareness. So short of a pre-awareness, you need a big hook, I think, to really cut through all of the clutter that's out there. And I just really use my own personal taste as the litmus test, as the pH test for what I think is commercial. Is this something that I'm going to try and go see on a Friday night, opening weekend? Because if it's not, I mean, that's really the criteria. If you're going to get around to it eventually to see it, or I'll just get it on demand, well, I mean, that's not a theatrical release movie these days. So it has to be something that'll get you out of your seat. And it's also such tremendous effort goes into marketing the project just to even sell it, much less get it made. And then,
identifying who the potential buyers could be, getting in the doors, pitching, competing for time with the executives and the studios and all of that.
Well, and typically you have to package projects these days, which means adding in talent or directors or some meaningful element that's going to get people's attention or leverage the project with the buyers, with the financiers, because otherwise a script doesn't go as far as it used to, unfortunately. So things that might even be acknowledged as, this is really well written, this is a really great script, number of years ago, that was enough because there was a robust development marketplace. Now there is not really a development marketplace. Studios are functioning more like just pure financiers, and they don't want to be developing because it's speculative, and they want that money going into production and marketing. So the speculative expenses they're minimizing or cutting completely, and they're only going to develop things that they have to because it has Will Smith attached, or it's Adam Sandler's production company, right, or what have you.
So what happens in the case of a movie like Juno? Juno, Diablo Cody's film from a number of years ago. I mean, that was low budget. It didn't particularly have very well known. I mean, definitely not stars in it. Well, actors that are known, but not stars. And I mean, I don't really know enough about the budget. It just came to mind because that's a movie that or Little Miss Sunshine. Those are movies that maybe that is because I'm going back a number of years.
Well, it's that,
Or
and
is
it's
it
also
that they
well,
course a different path.
Well, they both had Fox Searchlight doing the marketing. So for limited release, platform release movies that are highbrow and have, I mean, in those two examples, I mean, the Diablo Cody script was highly regarded all around town. I think it had many iterations of the way the movie could have come together, and it happened to come together in that way. And even though it was lower budget, it still had an ample budget. I mean, Fox Searchlight keeps their budgets under 15, under 12 maybe even. But so they have certain criteria. But it still had Jennifer Garner and Jason Bateman, and had a talented filmmaker behind it and a renowned script. So each project has its own particular story. There is no one standard way that any project finds its path to production. Little Miss Sunshine, I mean, they got really lucky with Steve Carell, and that was a Sundance darling. And you know, they had Steve Carell in that film right when he exploded. So I mean, he really was just, you know, just some guy on a TV show that nobody watched, or I don't know if The Office had really come out or had broken through, but then he just kind of exploded. Oh, and 40-Year-Old Virgin. Right. So they were on the heels of that, so that shined a light on it, and it got a lot of attention. It had a great screening at Sundance and got picked up by Searchlight, but that was financed independently, but by a company that had the ability to just, you know, pull the trigger on the movie. So each movie is unique, but it still has a story behind it, and there was, I'm sure, tremendous Herculean efforts on the part of the producer to assemble those elements, which only in retrospect looks like, oh, well, that was a sure bet.
Right. Yeah. 2020 hindsight. Sure. But that's a perfect segue to the production aspect of this, where you're saying that there's very little or no difference between what a manager does and what a producer does. Yeah. What would be the details behind that?
Well, if you look at it in terms of traditionally what a producer does is develops a script, assembles the elements that make the project go, garners the financing, interfaces with the studio. All of those aspects are certainly what I do as a manager, and I think in most cases the line between producing and representation has become blurred because producers are so reliant on agencies to package, on other people to package. I mean, it really does take a village to make anything go. Yeah. So you're really working behind the scenes and triangulating all of the forces at your disposal to make the stars align so that you can make your project move from one step to the next. So again, if I find a writer and they've got an idea and I think they're talented, that whole process of development can be a year or 2 years of developing a project to the point where I feel it's marketable. And then the first thing that I'll do is take it to talent, take it to directors. So that project is that process is producing. So it's producing on the development side, it's producing on the packaging side, then you're taking it out and marketing it. So yes, as a rep, but if it was, you know, functioning as a producer, you're doing the same thing. You're looking to set your project up, you're looking to secure the financing, and then you're helping to get any movie made. And even if I'm plugging clients into writing assignments or directors into assignments, you become a de facto producer of that project from that point forward in most cases, because you're interfacing with the studio, you're reading the material, you're helping develop whatever the next step of that project is, you're talking to the producers, you're helping to steer it, package it. I mean, the role is incredibly similar. So, I mean, to me, it's one and the same. Like I said, you're either getting credit or you're not, but it's really the same. It's a very producerial approach, at least my personal approach is, to management.
Any insights into why it is that the road goes both ways? Meaning that there are, and by the way, these for you folks that are joining us, this is a live chat question session, so you can go ahead and ask whatever questions you want, and we'll get to them hopefully in order. I've been sort of reading off of the chat questions and then incorporating those questions into the interview. So if you see me looking around,
that's fine.
That's what I'm doing.
Cool.
So is that then why, getting back to the manager producer question, is that then why it goes in the other direction as well, which is one of our user questions from Kevin, that producers often also become managers? Do you have any insights on that? Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I think years ago, indie prod, like an independent producer, was the job. If you didn't have a specific role at a studio or a production company, you're an independent producer. Now I think that shifted to being a manager. So, when I started, like I said, there was really one lit manager, and then I followed in his footsteps. And now, people would say, why do I need a manager? What does a manager do? Agents would say, why would I share a client with a manager? And someone joked and said, agents still ask that question. But now I think it's considered, manager's the first step. I mean, everyone, if you're going to get a representative, it's easier to get a manager. Managers break talent. They tend to foster talent at an earlier stage. Agents come in later stage. So there wasn't this preponderance of managers. So yeah, as a independent producer, it's impossible to make a living. I mean, that's, unless you are independently wealthy, there's no money in being an independent producer. Even if you're producing at the studio level or what have you, it's a tremendous amount of work. Studios, there's just no revenue unless the movie gets made. And with how many projects you have to nurture over such a long period of time through tremendous effort, you can't just subsist on producing fees. So that would be one reason why producers, at least you can generate revenue as a manager if you're successfully setting projects up, so that on commission basis. So that would be one reason for it. But like I said, the skills that are applied are very similar. They're complementary to what a producer does. It's cultivating talent, it's developing story, it's marketing it, it's raising financing or finding the financiers. So it's aligning elements, it's brokering the right introductions. So it's a very similar job. So yeah, that would explain why there might be many producers that wear a manager hat as well.
I've certainly gotten an idea for the time investment that goes into each individual project, and by extension, each individual client. So then, as a way to subsist, you basically have to have a rotation of projects constantly.
Lots of irons in the fire. While
looking, and this is, I'm sort of segueing into a question, from Rose Young. Hi, Rose. She's asking, how how do you go about finding talent for your project? So we touched on this a bit at the beginning of the interview, but just in case Rose is now joining us, maybe in this context we can address that a little bit.
But that's acting talent? Is that what she's asking?
This is writing talent.
How do you go? Well, I think you go wherever the writers are. So, I mean, if you pretty much everyone's written a screenplay. So yeah. I think there are a number of resources to find writers if you other than just the traditional agencies. But managers tend to be, I think, a little more open to finding other opportunities that might be non-traditional for their clients. But you just have to network, really, is the key. I mean, there are resources like Inktip, and
sure.
Script Shark, I think, is another. But Blacklist now, they have a whole pool of talent of people that are writers that are posting their scripts online with synopses. But there are a number of resources if you're an independent producer and you need to find a writer for your project. But really, I think the best way is word of mouth. And then and reading, whatever you can, asking your friends, have you read anybody interesting? Do you know anybody who would fit the bill? And just getting whatever they send you, reading it, and then building from there.
Right. Is there a tried and true way for a writer to develop relationships in the industry? Is there? I mean, yeah, you can sort of post on all the sites, but I'm playing devil's advocate a little bit. I'm sure that you've been approached or have found writers through other means than just discovering first their work. I mean, is there advice you can give?
Once you're more established, just as a representative, it's more or less by personal referral. So, I mean, I get lots of solicitations for representation, but what cuts through it is either meeting that individual myself or being referred by a client or someone I trust. I mean, you're just going to prioritize as a read something that you get from someone that you know. So that's why networking is so key. It's pass your script to whomever has a connection to anybody and might be able to hand it off to someone where there's that personal connection as opposed to unsolicited email query or phone call or what have you. There's really, and in terms of the skill set I had mentioned earlier, you need to be able to be networking. So if you can't network with people that could get your material to others, then, I mean, that's really a key to being successful in Hollywood too, is being a networker and being out there. So you've got to find those different opportunities and those different networking groups and industry events to meet people and have real connections. I mean, I just did a mentorship at Cinestory. They run a screenwriting competition, and it was a weekend retreat. The top finalists for their contest are invited, given the opportunity to come to the retreat, and I was really impressed by the level of writer and how professional each was and the quality of the work. And so you have, and most not represented, or all not represented, in fact. But what was great about that, and why I would encourage something like that, is that you create a personal connection with the mentors or the people who are working in the industry while you're at the retreat or that event. You're mixing it up with other higher level professional oriented writers as well, who could potentially help you or steer you in the right direction. Yeah. And it just gives you an opportunity to showcase your work. So those kinds of things, and finding out what are the good extension classes, who are the right professors to make a connection with, what are the professional programs, what are the networking events. I mean, that's all part of it.
So it seems like there's certainly a lot of talented writers out there, and there's never been a shortage of ideas of things that would make stories that would make good movies, potentially. We've talked about how, at least on the studio side of things, everything seems to be these high concept movies or something that you can sort of bank on, take the speculation out of it, which points to the economies of the business. I've noticed over the course of, I'll put a number on it, but I can't say this for certain. Let's say over the course of the past 5 years, more or less, really great content on cable television, on a series. One just came to the mind. This is going back more than 5 years, but for example, The Wire, and now we have Breaking Bad, which is a fantastic series as well.
Homeland.
Yeah.
Mad Men.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there is, thankfully, a big list of good series out there. I mean, really good.
Fantastic. Cinematic.
Yeah, the production value, the writing is very good. So is the direction, every element. So where did that come from? Why is it that we're now getting this treasure trove of fantastic television?
This renaissance in television.
Yeah.
The reason I'll give you is that the film studios need projects that will appeal to as wide an audience as possible. So there's something called the 4 quadrants, which is male, female, young, and old. So Pixar movies are 4 quadrant movies. So you've got the largest audience possible. A rated R movie that's very actiony is going to be, 2 quadrant male. If you have something like, Whip It or Ramona and Beezus, which were both movies I was involved in, they're really more 1 quadrant, hoping to get a 2nd quadrant. So you have tween girls. So young girls is 1 quadrant. But the studios, because the cost of making and marketing a movie on average is $100 million, they need something that will appeal to as broad an audience as possible.
What are the ratios there in making and marketing? So what would be the ratio of making versus marketing?
Oh, it's probably like 75 million to 25 million to market.
Okay.
75 million production cost. That number's probably higher. That may be a year or two old, but it's circa 100 million. So cable, the way that the networks are appealing to their own audiences, their whole attitude is, bring me something unique, bring me something you can't find anywhere else, and bring me something that speaks just to our audience. So you have, and this is one of the concepts, that I talk about, which is micro audience. Mad Men has an audience for as culturally, resonant as it's been, and the audience has grown, but it typically would have an audience of 1.5 million people. I mean, that's a micro audience in anybody's book, but the quality is so high, and then you have people finding it on home video, and it just became something resonant in our culture. And I think the most recent finale had like 5.5 million viewers. Walking Dead beat all the network shows with the exception. It's the most watched. It had 10.5 million people watch the mid-season finale. It was the most watched program outside of Sunday Night Football for the coveted demo of 18 to 49. So you have cable that are saying, bring us unique voices, bring us fresh concepts, bring us something that is undiluted in terms of the creator's imprimatur on that programming, which is 180 degrees diametrically opposed to what the studios want. Studios say, bring me something that's repurposed, regurgitated, remade, reimagined, that's pre-existing IP, so that we're not marketing it from ground zero. Bring me something that appeals not to a niche audience, but to the widest audience possible. They're also I think, not branding themselves in any way. Like, is there really any distinction? Like, our studio only does XYZ kind of project, as opposed to if you see something on AMC, they don't want something you can find on Lifetime or FX. HBO doesn't want something you can find anywhere else. Showtime wants something distinct. Bravo is now moving into scripted. I mean, they know their audience. They know exactly the kind of programming they want. So they've become hyper-specific about appealing to their niche audiences, their micro audiences, and then they're growing this high quality content, and they're growing the audiences that they have. So you're seeing things that are just really strong, powerful storytelling that's been undiluted by other, by studio intervention. So it's the creator voice, and that's been their mandate, what they're looking for. So I think that's why people are gravitating as they are to cable programming, whereas a lot of the studio stuff is down the middle and feels somewhat watered down and repurposed, because it is. And I think if the studios start to embrace a bit more original voices, then things will swing back. And you're even seeing with network broadcast networks, they're wanting to emulate cable, because that idea of unique niche programming is actually proven to be very popular and robust. So they're now chasing that aesthetic as well. So it really all goes back to, voice, creativity, unique ideas, and letting something be the best version of what it can be, undiluted, and then putting it out there to an audience and watching it grow.
In terms of doing it right.
I mean, without putting in a judgment on it, but
no, I'm the one that's putting the judgment, because that sounds good to me.
Yeah. It's certainly working. It's been very commercially viable.
How'd that happen? I mean, I'm leading this conversation because it's a trend, and I've talked to you, we've examined sort of what it is that you've done in the past and how you got into this business, and what your thoughts are on the specifics of the business. And now we're moving away from what the traditional media was, and starting to see a change in the way that it's going to television. Ultimately, we're going to get to new media, which is really the creator's hands on the steering wheel.
Yeah.
So on our way there, what happened? What happened that the priority shifted so that it's the cable channels and the producers or the executives at cable channels that sort of establish this mandate of we want the original ideas? What is it that occurred? Was it a shift in the economy of the business, that the money dried up? And I mean, what do you know?
Well, you had a lot of you had feature writers and other content creators in other areas that migrated to television because there was an opportunity to create something that got made. So you saw that
there was
shift.
An appeal to it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a feature writer that gets frustrated not getting their movies produced after a while, even though they're successful, and this is one of the precepts of defining what it means to be a content creator, because you can be extremely successful and have a lucrative career writing, but not actually be creating any content. And that was something that, I recognized even for myself in my own work, is that I'm doing it for the audience. I'm doing it so that its story's well told and an audience can appreciate it. And so much of what we do in Hollywood is talk about creating content without creating content. And if you have writers that want to get their content made or their stories made, and there's an opportunity and outlet to do so, and I think that was part of the shift in television. So you had feature people migrating to that, but you had also with cable, they wanted to be very distinct. So you could do things that were different than what the network television network TV was developing and putting on the air. So it wasn't watered down. It was edgier. You could have dangerous protagonists because again, they just wanted a niche audience. You didn't have to get the same wide swath of audience right from the get-go, and you could start small and build. And so, you had shows on USA like Monk, and you had South Park on Comedy Central. I mean, you had shows that were bigger than the networks that they were on. So you had destination programming, essentially. It's like, I mean, even not Sunny in Philadelphia on FX, but Hot in Cleveland. I mean, what channel is that on? TV Land? I mean, so you have shows that are bigger than the cable network. They help define the cable network. And then even a network like AMC. I mean, AMC is American Movie Classics. So they were, they have reruns of Westerns and lots of classic cinema. And I mean, that was one of the things that even made Hell on Wheels. It's like, it appeals to their audience because they're running Westerns, and you have a TV series that ties in perfectly with the audience for their feature content that they're programming. So there are lots of reasons for it, but I mean, those are a few. So the creators get to do their get their vision across. They get their stories produced. You have distinctive voices. You have new kinds of storytelling, new formats, and with the success of each of these, like the Showtimes and the HBOs, you start to have other networks, cable networks, pop up around that, and I mean that snowball just keeps growing. Like I said, Bravo. I mean, they've been doing reality. And even the networks that start in reality, moving to scripted, MTV. I mean, MTV, there's no videos on MTV, and there haven't been for years. So it's all programming. It's for that market, for that audience. So they all have niche audiences, and they know who that audience is, and it's a way for them to appeal to all of these different segments of the marketplace.
So am I hearing good news then for writers that we're moving more into a scripted time period?
Well, I think reality is never going away, but yeah,
I mean,
there's a lot more scripted development happening on the cable TV side for sure. But it's still, they still want brand names. It's still gotten to that. They're still looking for great ideas, I think, ultimately, but it still helps to have brand names, brand name showrunners, brand name content creators, marquee writers, because they're promotable and they're a bit more of a guaranteed bet, I guess you could say. They're proven in another medium.
Right.
So
proven in another medium, content creator, and niche audiences. I mean, that's a perfect segue into new media. So you, Seth's the founder and CEO of a website called Content Engine. There's a lot of great content on there. He hosts a show called Drive and Talk, which is
Hollywood Drive and Talk.
Hollywood Drive and Talk. I'll briefly describe my impression of it, and then
please do. I'd love to hear it.
We can get into the motivation behind that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's in my opinion, highly informative, off the cuff, very real, in the moment opinion of what's going on in this industry, and positioned or put in a context that's very helpful. It's very helpful to hear from somebody that's on the road between office and home, studio and office, about what the experience has been like, and what the ideas in your head about what the experience should be like is. There's a lot of other really cool stuff, good interviews and good content.
Thanks.
Coincidentally, and ironically, on Content Engine.
ContentEngine.tv.
ContentEngine.tv. Yeah.
So just this, I guess the motivation for it, I mean, it's
By the way, excuse me, Michelle, I got your question. We're getting to it. Now that we're in the new media, we're talking about new media. I'll be sure to include your question. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah.
So the first was the realization that if you want to be a content creator, you need to be creating content and publishing it to an engaged audience on a frequent, ongoing, consistent basis. So that's the first criteria. So if you consider yourself a content creator and you're a screenwriter, but your projects aren't getting made or haven't gotten made yet, or if you're an author and you haven't gotten a book published, if your work isn't getting out to an audience, and it's not a disparagement, it's just a distinction, you're not actually a content creator. And this was something that I applied to myself, is that I want to be creating content. I want an audience to be able to experience it and engage in it. So I need to do that for myself. So there's something incredibly satisfying if you're a content creator, self-defined, and you're putting content out there, as we're doing right now, and you are with mytv.tv, creating content and putting it out there for a global audience to access. So that's one motivation. The second motivation is really to just be helpful to others, to try and inspire people. I think that's really guided my career and my motivation in cultivating the talent that I have and working on the projects that I have, and then the kinds of projects that they are. I think the cut through, or the through line, is really to be inspirational. I like to inspire others to do their best work and to inspire them to inspire in turn. And so I think that informs the content that's there, and also the things that I talk about on Hollywood Drive and Talk. I try and really see the new media landscape, or what I call the new media verse, through a Hollywood prism. So, I have almost 2 decades of experience in the traditional media business and many facets of the new media business. So I love, movies are my first passion. I love film, television. I love publishing. I've worked in comic books. I love working with talent. I love working in the collaborative medium.
Virgin
all of
Comics,
it.
Right?
Virgin Comics, which was the Chopra family and Richard Branson startup based in Bangalore, India. So that was, working internationally with creative talent and writers and illustrators out of India. So I'm interested in almost everything, and I tend to, so I just want to bring those interests to others, and specifically with Hollywood Drive and Talk, there's just a philosophy around doing business, and also an approach to new media and to navigating the mediaverse. I think we just lost our sound.
We did. Sorry, guys. Did we just lose it? Hello?
Hello. Certainly lost it through my headphones.
Sorry, guys. A little technical difficulty here, but here we go. All right.
Are we back?
I think so.
Yeah, that sounds better.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, guys. I pushed the wrong button. I'm sound engineering this session as well.
On the fly.
Celine,
well, that's one of the precepts, for example, is that Milange is the new job description. So what does that mean? Okay, I'm a manager, I'm a producer, I'm a content creator, but I'm also recording my drive-in talks myself, cutting them myself, uploading them to YouTube, annotating them in YouTube, pushing them out to social media. So I'm wearing many hats. For anybody that has worked at my company, my assistants, or any of the interns, I'm looking for an amalgam of different skill sets. So I need somebody who not just good at reading scripts or writing coverage or answering the phone, but somebody who has a knowledge of social media, someone who knows how to edit, someone who can edit sound, someone who can mix sound. So you may not need all of the skill sets, but you certainly need a melange, a variety of skills. And I think that's true for anyone working any kind of aspect of entertainment these days is you have to wear many hats, and you have to be skilled in wearing many hats. And we're in this great time of re-education where, because change is happening at such an accelerated rate, I mean, the rate of change has changed. Change is the only constant. We have to be re-educating ourselves as quickly as we can, because our environment is changing so rapidly around us. So the skill set that we had before is not sufficient. We're in a time where we have to teach ourselves new platforms, new modes of conducting ourselves in our business, of building our own personal brand, of putting ourselves out there. And it just requires educating ourselves, re-educating ourselves. It's an ongoing process. And that's part of what the inspiration for Content Engine TV is as well, to help in that process of re-education and inspiration. I completely
agree with you that, I mean, everybody's a multi-hyphenate now, you know.
Yes.
And you have to be.
You must be. Question.
Yeah. Michelle. Looking for Michelle's question. Oh, here she is. So Michelle asks, if as we shift to new media, where is the market for it? How does a small producer go about selling a web series?
Any way you can. You can raise money on Kickstarter and do it. You can, beg, borrow, and steal from friends and family. You don't need a lot of money. You shouldn't be making things for a lot of money. I mean, a few $1,000s, really at the most. That's to go out and do it on your own. The whole idea is that you want to be able to make it cheaply enough so that when you can monetize it, even if a few $1,000s trickle in from Blip TV or YouTube or a cold cast or whatever platform you happen to be on, that is somehow significant, and it enables you to say, oh wow, this was a profitable venture, let's go make another season and build your audience. Again, you want a sustainable, build from a micro audience so that your IP, intellectual property, your web series is sustainable, and you can grow that audience until it's something worthwhile, and then potentially cross that over into traditional media. But there are a few different platforms to sell it. Vuguru produces web series. I'm working on one with Warner Digital, with Sony Crackle, but you still need access, because those platforms, I mean, Hulu you could say, is a web-centered web series platform, even though they're doing things more in the traditional TV model. I mean, Netflix and Amazon are doing it as well, but it's a bit more the traditional TV model. So
should an independent producer like Michelle be, I mean, I'm not saying you, Michelle, I'm just using you as an example. Somebody that's out there trying to get their web series. Okay, so let's say you beg, borrow, and steal, and you get your web series up on the net. Mm-hmm. Should your eye be toward growing that niche audience and listening to them and incorporating the feedback, or whatever, however you want to proceed about producing this series, with an eye toward crossover, or should your eye be fixated solely on staying on the net? I mean, of course, it's wonderful if people gravitate to your content. Somebody shows up and says, hey, we want to buy this idea, right? I mean, that's great. But should that be the focus, is my question.
I don't think it can be the focus. I think the focus needs to be engaging an audience, identifying who your audience is, targeting your IP to that audience, understanding how to reach them, and building that audience however you can on all the social media platforms that you can. I mean, the good news is you can own your IP. The bad news is you have to market it. And the marketing is half to 2/3 of the job. And
IP being intellectual property.
Right. I say IP as a catch-all for any content that you might produce, print, broadcast on any platform in the mediaverse. So you got to build an audience for your IP, and it's tough to do that. And you have to figure out how to do that and how to make it sustainable and aggregate an audience and grow that audience and how to engage with that audience. And there are myriad ways to do it. I mean, look at how popular a number of YouTubers are right now. And I mean, that's been an organic process. It's not about uploading a video to YouTube and just hoping people will come see it. I mean, you really actively have to work on building your audience. And I mean, that's something that I'm engaged in doing for myself for Content Engine, for one of the reasons being, I want to practice what I'm preaching, and it takes a tremendous amount of time and energy to do it. So for content creators that are successful doing it, it certainly shows determination and aplomb, and that they're utilizing all of their skills. But that's really what's necessary anyway for any kind of success in traditional media, I think, is you're a brand, you have a relationship with your audience, whether you're a showrunner with a popular show on the Sci-Fi Channel or NBC, or whether you're just a YouTuber, not just a YouTuber, but a YouTuber, and your audience are other YouTubers and people that are primarily online. So again, it's part of being a content creator these days is knowing who your audience is, how to reach them, and building that audience yourself.
In private conversations that we had, you've referred to this period, and please don't let me misquote you. So you referred to this period as a paradigm shift, that the paradigm is changing, that the old rules and the old models sort of, well, I'm going to say this, you didn't say this, but that it's on the way out, and new media is here to stay, and it's the future. I want to talk a little bit about that, and I want to incorporate a question from Andrew here that has something to do with that. And he asked about transitional media. How do writers, specifically authors, get their work into the right hands? We did talk a bit about how to do that in traditional media. But should, let's say, a novelist be looking toward new media creators to get their stories told in a cinematic or episodic format?
Sure, absolutely. I think, again, the philosophical shift is that you have to consider yourself a brand. So as a content creator, you can no longer consider yourself a siloed writer,
that bears repeating.
A siloed director, or a siloed anything. You are a brand. To garner success on any platform, whether you're a published author or television writer or feature screenwriter or director, you need to establish yourself independently as a brand with an audience. So, Jon Favreau has a big Twitter following. Rian Johnson was really good utilizing social media. You have a number of content creators that are savvy with social media and building their brands. But as an aspiring author, writer, whomever, you also are a brand. Even if your audience is 50 people, friends and family on Facebook, and I think most people probably have a couple hundred Facebook friends, if that. But there's so many platforms now available to you to build an audience for whatever it is you do. You have to be cognizant that you are a brand, you have a distinct voice, you have a perspective, you have something to say. You need to be able to be consistent about doing that. And then, as I define content creator, on a ongoing basis, to be consistently publishing content, IP, to that audience. So whether that means you're a comedian and you're tweeting consistently in the same voice as your stand-up comedy act, or you're an author of YA novels and you're developing an audience of tween girl followers who love the things that you're tweeting, or the chapterized versions of the stories that you're publishing, or whatever it might be. You have to identify who is the audience for my work, build that audience, and be publishing and engaging with that audience, publishing to that audience. Because when you have your book come out, you need that audience in place to make your book successful, because the publisher's not going to do the marketing for you. The network's not going to market you, even if they're marketing the show. So being able to leverage that audience that's out there waiting for any traditional media that might come their way, you need them in place for that traditional media to be successful. And I think that's part of the paradigm shift, and that's what we're seeing with any new IP that the studios are releasing. It's very hard for stuff to cut through all of the clutter that's out there and all of the divided attentions unless there's a name brand in some way. Like, oh, I know what this project is. I follow this writer, this director, or whomever it is. I'm waiting for this IP. I'm going to consume this IP because I know where it's coming from. Our attentions are scattered across so many different platforms and so many different aspects of social media that we have the people that we follow that we're fans of, and they need to get our attention when they have something new that they're putting out there.
Right, whether it be a YouTuber or it be Soderbergh, we have those people out there that we follow,
and you can engage those people. And then you have examples like Louis C.K., who has built over a number of years his audience, and now goes over the top directly to his audience to sell his shows. There's no distributor, there's no middleman. He just goes directly to them and tries to deliver value to that audience. And because they are genuine fans, that he's engaged, that love him, that follow him, they will purchase his stuff directly from him, because they also want to support him as a content creator.
Yeah, I read that Mike, I think his name is Mike Lee, the writer director of the movie Kids that came out in the 90s.
Harmony Korine did Kids.
Okay, then I got to do
Mike Lee does improvised.
Right. But it is the director of Kids.
Yeah, Harmony Korine.
Or was it the writer? Now, see, I got myself into trouble by
going...
Same?
Oh, sorry. Harmony Korine wrote it. Larry... what's his name? He's a photographer.
Maria.
He directed it.
Maria, we need help. What do you mean? A little Google foo. Who's the writer of Kids?
The writer's Harmony Korine.
Larry Clark.
Larry Clark directed it. Yep, that's right.
That Larry Clark, if I heard this from Raquel, a cinematographer friend of mine, that his next project is being released. It is released online because he had so much trouble dealing with the MPAA that he's just like, you know what, this is my movie and it's online, and you pay $5 or whatever it is, and you can watch it there. So.
Well, chill.com, which is a video aggregator, they just launched, I want to say it's called Chill Direct, and that really is like an online marketplace for filmmakers to distribute their feature-length projects. And there's a comedian that has a show up there right now, and so you can price it yourself. Any content creator can use it. It's not a subscription model. It's really, like a pay-to-play model. So you can download a specific movie or a specific program, whatever it might be, and they have created this marketplace so that content creators, filmmakers can self-distribute. And so you still have to drive traffic.
Yeah, the work is still there. But,
to your project, but and there are a few platforms out there, I guess, already. But they just last week launched it, Chill Direct, so you should check it out. That's another way to reach your audience.
I
and
just
get paid for your content.
I just got a warning here that we've gone over the allotted hour.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm not
My
saying
pleasure.
I'm not saying goodbye. I'm saying thanks so much for sticking with us.
Well, now we're getting to the meat of it.
Right. So if you don't mind,
sure.
A couple of questions from our users, and then I guess we can keep talking or wrap it up.
Okay.
So let's see. Ryan. Well, nope. I asked Ryan's question. W. Bloomfield, is cable programming new media the best shot for unknown but experienced actors these days?
Yeah, it very well may be. I mean, the key is I'm not advocating eschewing the traditional media route. So you can do everything you would do to get represented, get yourself in front of, in actors' case, casting directors, or try and get the traditional media gigs. Keep doing that. But now you have this fantastic opportunity where there are no barriers to entry. There's almost no cost in doing it. Most of the platforms are free, and you can use it as a showcase of your talent. So if you're talented and creative and have the ability to go make something, do something, be in something, and show your talent, you should do that. Even if that's something just to link to for people in traditional media, like, oh, check this out. It just shows that you're proactive, that you're entrepreneurial, that you're constantly creating and doing, which is really what it's all about. You're not waiting for an opportunity to come to you. You're going out and creating the opportunities. And you never know where mixing it up will lead and who you're going to meet and what kind of serendipities come into play. I mean, someone I know calls it the billiard ball effect. You know, you may not sink the ball in the pocket that you were planning to, but the billiard balls are connecting with each other in ways that you wouldn't expect that they would. So I would absolutely, it's a great way as an actor. But again, you want high quality stuff out there. I mean, I was gave a presentation, and someone had asked, like, oh, so I'm a writer, so I'll put my schlocky stuff online, and that is not what you should do. It's really about being authentic to who you are and your voice, but having high quality material. I mean, 72 hours of video is uploaded every minute to YouTube, so it's an imperative to have your video be high quality.
So those people that are out there, myself included to a certain extent, that are concerned that they have the next great idea and don't want to put it on YouTube or don't want to put it on the web for fear that it's going to get stolen. And I think that that's perfectly justifiable. I mean, is there an argument then, if I'm hearing you correctly, about this writer that you mentioned as an example, about putting the schlocky stuff out there? Your advice would be no. Go ahead and put your best stuff out there, put your best voice, put your best foot forward, because you're competing with so much traffic that why not? Or
well, and it's not saying if you've conceived it as a movie, do that version of it for the web. It's to say, is there another aspect of that idea, or is there another idea that you can come up with that is organically for the web, that is, uniquely for the web or for that format? Because it
right. So you're saying it's not a question about putting a value on the quality of the work, saying, okay, I'm going to save my good stuff for the traditional landscape, and my not so good stuff, I'll play around with that in social media. It's saying adjust your thinking, saying, okay, this is a format, and I want my good stuff, my good voice, my real voice, my true voice to fit within this format.
Within all of the platforms, on all of the platforms.
So
that's exactly right. It's your brand. You don't want to dilute your brand.
That's what's important.
You're establishing your brand. So if I'm checking you out on Pinterest, I want to see that the things that you've pinned are of a high quality and also are unique and true to your brand and who you are creating yourself to be, the image you're creating for yourself. So Pinterest, Google+, Facebook, Twitter, whatever the platforms might be, any of the video platforms, I mean, the work should be consistent. You're expressing yourself on, another aspect of yourself, and it shouldn't be any less authentic or less qualitative than your best stuff, quote unquote.
Quote unquote. So last question it's from Elias. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Elias, or it could be Elias, but we'll go with Elias. Other than counting on social media, what do you suggest about getting clients to a newly launched local production company? And he adds, thank you and thank you.
Thank you. A newly launched production company.
So if I'm understanding the question, it's how do you bring talent to you? So if I think I'm understanding the question. It's still an interesting question, even in this interpretation of it. So you launch a production company, you have a presence on the net, and now you're in the sourcing business. You have to go and find those content creators that are going to be featured on your production company, or you basically have to go back to being a producer.
Well, it's the same thing. It's scouting talent. So where do you scout talent? I mean, if you're looking to do stuff on the web, then I would scout it on the web, on the different new media platforms, and identify those people that resonated for me, and then reach out to them. I mean, that's part of like the distinction between the YouTube stars and maybe traditional media stars. The YouTube stars have an engagement with their audience. I mean, when they do the YouTube little conventions and things like that, I mean, people come up to them, they know them. It's there isn't that arm's length stardom aspect. So they're all really engaged. They all understand audience engagement is key. So if you're reaching out to content creators online, chances are they're going to respond to you. So that would be one way. I mean, the other way is, what is your brand as a production company? What's your intent? What are you putting out there? So you need to demonstrate who you are in branding yourself, and also be able to identify, okay, so I'm a brand, what's my pitch, what's my ambition, and then, be posting stuff online, get out there in person, mix things up, but understand what the opportunity that you're offering.
What your own mandate is, what aesthetic value you want to present, what your tastes are. Is it comedy, drama, whatever it is that you're doing?
Yeah, and what you can offer. Is it production infrastructure? Is it money? Is it some kind of equipment? Is it distribution? What is the unique aspect that you're offering with your production company, and then assemble that into a succinct pitch that's convincing.
Okay, cool. Well, I hope that answered it, guys. I just have one last bit of, I'm curious about talking a little bit more about a conversation that we began having when we met. And it's based on the opinion you began sharing with me about what the future looks like. So from your insider's perspective, what does the future look like as far as traditional media versus new media? And is it a didactic thing? Is it a versus thing, or is there a coexistence?
Well, I think traditional media will always exist. I mean, the distributors and financiers that are involved in traditional media will adapt. They will change, they will shift. But we are in a revolutionary time right now, and everything is moving towards new media. So until the distribution pathways are set and the big brand names are set, and we know, okay, in the first 3 weeks of something's release, it's it's going to be on Netflix or Hulu, or like we have theatrical windows and then home video pay windows and VOD and what have you. It's all kind of a free-for-all right now. So everyone's trying to experiment with what might work. It's something of the Wild West. So as that process works itself out, I think the traditional media companies will acclimate and will adapt. But for the time being, there are no barriers to entry anymore, whereas in the traditional media pathways, the barriers have never been higher. The tools have never been cheaper. The quality, the opportunity to make high quality stuff has never been more accessible. There's now nothing between you and an audience and the audience that you can build on your own. So there's tremendous opportunity in that regard to go out and do it on your own as a content creator. Now, it's not easy to do. I mean, one of the things that I've come to even at this point, it's kind of like a call to action, is, if you can't make it on your own, you can't make it in Hollywood. So what I mean by that is Hollywood is tougher than making it on your own. Making it on your own isn't easy by any stretch, but you don't have naysayers. You don't have barriers to entry. You don't have lots of filters for your content to get to an audience. You don't have tons and tons of financing to go out and raise. You do have the ability to start reaching an audience on your own. And again, it's not easy. It's half to 2/3 of the job, the marketing. But one of the other precepts is understanding that marketing and storytelling go hand in hand. So build the marketing into your storytelling. Have that as an aspect of what you do, that engagement, that social aspect. But you have the ability to go out and make it on your own. Whereas even, just a few years ago, there were really only a handful of traditional media pathways that you could utilize to get your work, your IP, to an audience. And there are many, many filters to that. So that still exists, and you should still endeavor to make that happen for yourself if that's your aspiration. But in the interim, go out and be a content creator and publish your IP to a micro audience, and build your brand in the mediaverse. So that's really my advice and my call to action for any of the aspiring content creators or established content creators that are out there right now, because that success that you're looking for and that acknowledgement in the traditional media landscape will come with success in the new media landscape. What they want is audience. If you have audience, they will want you.
And to get that audience, you have to have a message that resonates. And how you get to that is through practice, education, belief, hard work, repetition, all sorts of different things. Different things for different people.
That's right.
And so contentengine.tv is your website.
Content Engine TV. Hollywood Drive and Talk is a web series worth checking out.
And I can't imagine that. I know we're going to have a lot of writers wondering about how to submit to you and things like that. But at this stage in your growth as a professional, what is I know that your interests lie elsewhere. So in what direction are you taking Content Engine, and what is the mission, your mission through that company? What do you hope to achieve, and where are you going now?
It's really just, the motto of the company is, the slogan is "Be the Change," and so I've identified, and everyone, as I've said earlier, everyone's experiencing tremendous change and upheaval and tumult, and the whole idea is, you need to be the change that you want to see in the world, which is something Gandhi said. So it's not lamenting that things are not how they used to be, fearing what they might become. It's saying, what do I want them to be? How do I want things to evolve, and becoming that. So that's really what I'm trying to do and illuminate for others. These are some of the new media philosophy I've talked about tonight. There's more on the Hollywood Drive-In Talks, and it's being an example. I'm putting it out there. I'm hanging it out there. It's another precept is, you got to get out of your comfort zone and hang it out there in ways that normally you may not or may not be comfortable with, and risk embarrassment and criticism and what have you. And that's the environment we're in. That's what you have to do. So the mandate for Content Engine is really to be the change and to embrace new media pathways as well as traditional media, and to cross projects over from one aspect to another, and to look at the new media environment as a way to start to express new ideas without all the different layers of permission that we typically have to go through, and to guide content creators as well as myself in this, new media environment, which is constantly evolving and changing, and the platforms are all changing. But it's really a dynamic, fun, interesting time. So, the site itself is a way for me to publish things that are interesting to me that I think could be inspirational to others. I've done, a few different series that relate to astrology. There's a terrific astrologer named Rishikavi Raghudas, who I've published a number of series. We did one on last year's Oscars, and his predictions, he was 8 for 8, predicting, Best Actor, Screenwriter, Director. Predicted the presidential election this year. We just did a series on Bond and looking at astrology of Bond, and from Ian Fleming all the way through Daniel Craig, and why this franchise has been so successful over the last 5 decades, and why it's experiencing more success than it's had ever. Almost $1 billion at the box office right now with Skyfall. I have another web series I do called Adventures of a Film Scholar, which is interviewing a filmmaker named Darren Paul Fisher. He's a UK filmmaker who also teaches at Bond University in Australia, and so we do a weekly Skype chat where we talk about directing actors, developing material, raising financing, marketing online,
with an eye toward education.
And we talk about the classroom aspect and then the practical implementation of those aspects, and he's studying to get his PhD. So that in itself, he's becoming a film doctor. So, I kind of have it, and the little icon for the series is a little like Indiana Jones. So this idea that, the two hats of filmmaker, film scholar.
Right.
And, and I've been getting involved with, USC and UCLA, and there's actually a great web series, online school called Creator Up, and they do a series of seminars and have different modules on creating web series and how to be successful marketing them and the different platforms to utilize. So, as I said, this time of re-education, and Content Engine is a part of it, and hoping to be one of the leaders in that, but educating people to be successful content creators and successful IP creators, because that's really, I'm passionate about working with content creators and creating IP and telling stories and collaborating, and I love every aspect of the business. So it's furthering all of those endeavors. If that's not too many.
No, it's not. I think you're doing great, and I'm a fan of the projects that you've worked on, so I can imagine I'll continue to be a fan.
Thank you.
And thank you so very much for giving us your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
For being so generous and sharing all of the information that you've accrued over so many years. And thanks,
we'll do
everybody.
it again.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
We'll do it again sometime.
Right on.
All right.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks
for
for your
joining
questions,
us.
and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks.
Bye.